On today's episode of Locked On Canadiens, is men's best on best international hockey back?
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 1246 of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day and for subscribing wherever you get your shows. Doing that supports our show and ensures you don't miss an episode. While I have you, leave a comment, put a like on the video, put a like anywhere you guys can, respond any way you can, feed the algorithm, let people know that you like this place. My name is Ian Boisvert, also known as @MaybeIt'sIan. I'm joined by Laura Saba, also known as the Active Stick. Laura, men's best on best ice hockey is back, and it's in the city that you are in. Is there a buzz around that, or is it mostly a TV event? I'm really curious.
I do think it is largely a TV event. I will say that. The buzz right now, honestly, I thought the game was going to get canceled because there's a massive snowstorm still going on here in Montreal. But prior to the game yesterday, so we all took a break yesterday. The episode was about Lane Hudson and his chances at the Calder Cup. So please check that out. It was an episode between Locked On Sharks, Locked On Flyers, and myself. But what it gave me the opportunity to sort of stay downtown after work and then, check out the buzz. And there were lots of people in Team Canada jerseys. In fact, actually, at lunchtime, I ran into a bunch of people in Sweden jerseys as well. So nice. there is a little bit of buzz. Like I think it was more than I expected, right? I didn't think that there was that much interest in the tournament personally, but especially since Canada was playing, it was the opening game. It ended up being really a good game, but the buzz in the city took a while to get there, but on the day of, I actually really did feel it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's someone watching it on TV. It was a really incredible event. Night one, Canada, Sweden, overtime game, really great. We're going to talk about sort of the current state of men's best on best ice hockey, where it's headed, and maybe some things we'd like to see them do. Today's Friday, so it's our mailbag. We've got a bunch of mailbag questions for you guys. We have trade proposals. We have thoughts on salary retention spots. We got a Valentines Day question. Very excited to get into all of that stuff. But let's start at the Four Nations face-off. Night one, it seemed to just show up without a ton of fanfare, honestly. And then, they got on the ice. It seems like Montreal, whether it's the Canadiens or Team Canada, they have some kind of ceremony, and they nailed it with this one with the former players coming out. Daniel Alfredsson got cheered, which I thought was spectacular. He's a great player, but it's very surprising that he got cheered in Montreal of all places. Maybe it's because he mocked Matt Sundin that one time and faked through the stick over the boards to make fun of him. Maybe he's an honorary Canadian in that moment.
Yes.
I was kind of surprised that it was Teemu Selanne instead of Koivu, but I understand why it was Selanne, but you could have gotten Saku Koivu out there and just played to the home crowd. But I understand why they did that.
Right. I mean, it was Selanne's their legend, right? That's totally fair. It was a missed opportunity for me with Koivu, but that happens. I really did think the Daniel Alfredsson love was really funny. I feel like as soon as he went to Detroit, Montreal Canadiens softened on him a little bit. I always like to call him Detroit legend, Daniel Alfredsson.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And look, the game, I think, started about as well as it could if you're the National Hockey League. I think if they could have drawn up a start to that game, it involved a lethal power play that went from McDavid to Crosby to McKinnon, or any three of them in any order. That's the goal we've been waiting for a decade. And we finally got it. And I was sitting on my couch just laughing at that play. Crosby gets it down low, does a spinning backhand pass through the slot. McKinnon had a day and a half to shoot that puck. That unit was incredible. It took them 10 seconds to score on that power play. They did not get another one all night because I think the referees realized we cannot do that again. And then before the game, we were told that essentially World Cup of Hockey will be back in February of 2028. The NHL is going to the Olympics in 2026, and the World Cup of Hockey and the Olympics will alternate every 2 years. So every 2 years, we're getting some kind of best on best tournament. This seems like the biggest NHL W in a long time, no?
Right. And it was so unexpected, too, because the way they did it was they just kind of threw it together. And like you mentioned, it was like, here, have one. You know,
Yeah.
you've been asking for it here, have one. And we didn't like the format because we liked the previous one so much, like the Team Europe and the Team North America, which is not coming back this time around. There's not going to be like an under 23 team or whatever. But that's fine because they're going to expand it. So there's going to be more nations. It's going to be a little bit more closer to the Olympics, right? And the fact that the NHL is doing this, it's not going to be like the World Championship where like one team gets all of its superstars and then a whole bunch of teams are just playing with whoever's available because they're not in the playoffs. But to me, like like right now, let's talk about it. Right now, the three best players, we haven't handed off the baton to Bedard, to Celebrini yet. The three best players in Team Canada, this is the first time we've actually got to see this happening. We've wanted this so long. And to actually be able to see it, it just kind of whet our appetite for even more. Like, I'm just thinking about it. And if Team Canada, Team USA don't galaxy brain their choices by the time the Olympics roll around and they actually do take the best players available, I think we're going to see some of the most spectacular hockey we have ever seen, because the men's game at this point, like with all the resources thrown into it, it is the fastest, sleekest, most exciting game it has ever been. And to like really just take the best of those players, it's going to be really, really fun. And there's going to be more nations at the Olympics too. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I always want to make a point with this to say that it's men's best on best, right? The women have
yeah,
always been doing this. The women have never
yeah,
left this best on best. When the NHL players weren't going to the Olympics, MPP and Sarah Nurse and Sarah Fillier, they were all there.
yes,
So that I want to make sure that we correct the record on a lot of this, that
yeah,
the women have always been doing this. They've
yeah,
had their priorities straight with this. International best on best matters a lot. And whether it's the Olympics or World Cup of Hockey or this one-time made-up event that we're all still like very invested in after one night, like it took one game and a
which we didn't
3-point.
care about 2 days ago.
No, and we got a 3-point game from Sidney Crosby, and they're chanting his name in overtime when he has the puck. Like, it's awesome. It shows how much people care about events like this.
Yeah,
Let's talk about the future of the World Cup, because that's an event that the NHL is going to have at their disposal. They're the ones making the decisions.
and the
Where do you
rules.
want to see this event go? Like, what locations would you say World Cup of Hockey games need to happen there?
It needs to be like when the NHL goes to Europe in the preseason, but they need to do it, the World Cup of Hockey. So it should go over to Europe, like, play in Prague or play in
Yeah.
a bunch of European cities, or pick a country and play there, really, because this is an opportunity for the NHL to kind of really expand to some of those nations which are now producing some really great players, but they still don't have that much investment in hockey. Like, to me, like that, this is such a prime opportunity. Go to Switzerland. I don't know. Go.
Yeah.
I love that idea. Or like even countries where the program is just so new, so they might not even have the ability to field a team for something like this, or even in the Olympics, but you want to increase interest, right? I think
Yeah.
it'll be really fun, especially in Europe. Like, people will travel throughout Europe and go. Like, I would love to see that, right? So to me, the only issue is like, do they have facilities that are able to take it? But you know what? Like, they can figure it out. Like, NHL investing across the pond is only going to be better for the NHL.
Yeah, I completely agree. I also think it's only a matter of time before Vegas hosts this, which would be kind of cool, right? Like, I think that would be fun to have an event there like that.
Yeah.
Much as it's not a traditional hockey market, it's a market that loves hockey. It's undeniable that market works for the
Yes.
National Hockey League,
It's a good
especially
time.
because, yeah, it's a good time, but especially because the NHL was the first men's league there. They were the
Mhm.
first, and they were the first to make a new team and put it there, like the Raiders relocating there in the NFL, or Oakland leaving their baseball team and taking them to LA or to Vegas in the future. Like, I think that's helped build that game in Las Vegas. So I'd like to see it there. I bet Montreal gets some games in the future. I bet Toronto gets some more games in the future, but they'll probably want to spread things out a little bit. It's
Yeah.
just, I'm very excited. I went into this tournament very skeptical, and after one game and them announcing that like
You're
best on
like,
best
it's back.
men's hockey is back, like it's just you just start to think in the future. It's like, okay, so basically we're only having an all-star game every 2 years then, right? Because we're gonna every other year we'll have an all-star game, right?
Right.
Because
And I just
they're
want to
either
believe
going to, yeah,
Yeah. So I want to leave with one point is that the NHL, by not going to the Olympics, really hurt themselves because the
Yeah.
appetite is clearly there. Like the huge mistake they made by not allowing these players to go to 2 Olympics in a row, like really hit them hard. And like I really hope they're smart enough to see how hard, because this is something they like, this tournament could have been something where people were like dying and clamoring and crawling all over and selling out their grandmas to get tickets. That's not what was
Yeah.
happening, but
Yeah. And remember, Gary Bettman and every other commissioner of every league, they are mouthpieces for the owners. So it's not Gary Bettman saying, I don't want to go to the Olympics. It's Gary Bettman saying, the 32 teams guys who own these teams told me they don't want to go to the Olympics. So let's remember to keep that in perspective, because that's how all of this works. Gary is a mouthpiece. I think most people understand that, but it's important to realize that. All right, we will leave the men's international best on best talk there. I will enjoy the rest of this tournament very much, so I'm very much looking forward to watching the rest of these games. But we'll leave that there because we have to head into our mailbag, and we'll start that one off with a Noah Dobson trade proposal. We'll get into that in just a minute. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss opening tip-off or you want to bet on fourth quarter comebacks, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three. I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Laura, we're back, and our mailbag is back. Thank you once again to all of our listeners, viewers, friends who send in questions. We see a lot of repeat offenders here, which we love to see. I love to see people coming back and, creating a community here. So thank you for sending in your questions. We'll start with one from our friend Boondoggle at Goldbreaking on Blue Sky, who asks, I read an article discussing Noah Dobson's availability. I guess the Islanders are looking for a high-level offensive help. Should the Habs try and build a package around Patrik Laine to bring in Noah Dobson? What are your thoughts on that? Because I think it's an interesting proposal.
So honestly, for me, like every time we talk about a Montreal Canadiens trade, I always worry about what kind of future they're sacrificing, and is it going to be mitigated by what is coming in, right? So I feel like Laine, to me, and don't get mad, Ian, is expendable.
Sure.
He's expendable. He was never in the plan for this core, right? His first season has been riddled with injury, let's say, right? One injury causing lots of problems. Riddled with problems related to an injury. So to me, he is one of the most expendable pieces because the Canadiens were always going to have to figure out how to move on without him, particularly because he makes so much money, and particularly since his contract is up after next season. So, he's either going to come in for a big payday or he's going to go out there looking for something. And I feel like we need a full year of Patrik Laine to kind of assess what he could bring in order to incorporate him into the future, into the true future of this team when they start to contend. So I'm okay with that. I'm okay with Patrik Laine going in a trade. But a big question is, do the Islanders want Patrik Laine?
Yeah, I think that's the linchpin for me is Lou Lamoriello. First of all, is he even there past this year, right? Who knows? With the way that team has gone this year, I would say he's honestly 50-50 to be here. I would have said there's no shot that he would be interested in a guy like Patrik Laine if he didn't just get Tony DeAngelo, which they're not similar players, but they are similarly the antithesis to what Lou Lamoriello sees in hockey. Like they're both, neither one of those guys should be on Lou Lamoriello's radar, but one of them he signed out of the KHL. So, I mean, I guess anything's possible in that respect. With respect to Laine, though, like in his future with this team, I think the Canadiens would want him to be part of the core of this team. However, his play recently has led them to maybe think that he won't be. Right? Like that's to me what I'm most looking at. At the end of this season on July 1st, the Canadiens can officially begin contract not begin contract negotiations, because I bet they're already talking. If they wanted to, they'd be talking now. But they can officially sign him to an extension.
Contract. It's not temporary.
Right. But they can officially sign him to a contract extension in July. I bet they come to the table and they try to figure out if Laine wants to stay and he comes in below or just around the same value that he's at now with the cap expanding, that's not such a bad thing. If not, and you think the value of him, if his value is too high, if his salary is too high and it just doesn't fit, then you should look at moving him. And if you were able to get a guy like Noah Dobson in return, you're laughing. Like that's an incredible trade, especially considering you turned that means you turned Jordan Harris into a second round pick and Noah Dobson. That I don't know why the Islanders would say yes to that, but that's a pretty great return if you're Kent Hughes and the Montreal Canadiens.
Yes.
All right, we'll keep moving here. Next question from Claude Sauvé. I have a topic that I would like to run by you while the NHL is on break. It's out there, so buckle up. What do you think about a couple of practice squad spots in the NHL similar to what the NFL has? It would be aimed at young players who are not quite ready for prime time. A practice squad player would not be part of the 23-man roster, so it would not affect the salary cap. The parameters would have to be different from a 13th forward, 7th defenseman, or 3rd goalie. For example, maybe time limits or age limits would have to be implemented to maintain the integrity of the program. What do you think about that? It reminds me of the COVID year when we had the taxi squad, and they could just have a bunch of guys just sitting around. Do you think that there's still a need for something like that?
Okay, so like let me just kind of understand how it happens in football. Like these guys don't actually play in the games; they're like they're like understudies.
Yep. So you're on the practice squad, and if your team has an injury, you can get called up from the practice squad. You get signed from the practice squad. But while you're on the practice squad, you can be signed by other teams, at least in the NFL, as long as you're going directly to their roster. So you can just pick. It's almost like permanent waivers where you can just pick guys off if you want to sign them.
That's really funny.
I don't know how that would work in the NHL, but I kind of do, at least with goalies. I kind of think that this might be valuable. But I also think the NHL is fine with the whole e-bug thing because it's good press. Like it's good publicity for them to roll out some 9-to-5 worker on a Wednesday night to try to save the game for the Winnipeg Jets. Like that to them is funny. They like that. And I understand why they like that.
Yeah. Plus Toronto once lost to a Zamboni driver of their own team. Under their, I think he was on their payroll. So that's always a good story. I do like the idea though. I feel like it should just be guys though. It shouldn't be like professional players. It should be like the e-bug thing, but just guys. You know, somebody who has played defense in like their beer league or whatever. Because this is going to be the opportunity for all kinds of guys to try and like live their dream and pretend to play professional hockey, and I think it'll be really funny because then they'll get out on the ice against, you know, the likes of Connor McDavid or whatever and realize that really they don't know what they're talking about.
The pros versus Joes aspect is very, very funny. I also look, I think the NHL still has their eyes on expansion, and I as the league continues to expand, I just wonder how many like players there are available that can, you know, make an NHL team. Like I'm thinking like right now there isn't 32 full rosters of NHL players. Like I don't know if you've seen the Chicago Blackhawks or most of the San Jose Sharks. Like a lot of those guys are not NHLers anywhere else in the league other than the team that they're playing on. So I'm always curious, like what point do you sort of run out of guys? I know hockey's
diluted the talent that much.
Yeah, I know hockey's, you know, the popularity of it is increasing, especially in the States with how good that international program has been. But I always worry about that aspect of it, that eventually we will hit our, you know, the point in the graph where we're flatlining. There's no more guys to give. And I wonder how long they have before they hit that. Any closing thoughts on a new taxi squad?
I think it's a fun idea. I still think it's a fun
Yeah,
idea. Maybe don't take my ideas and do just guys. Just like, sort of not ready for primetime players.
yeah, for sure, for sure. All right, we will head into our final segment where we're gonna finish off the mailbag for this week, talking about salary retention and Valentine's gifts, and we'll get into that in just a moment.
We've got a really exciting new sponsor to tell you all about, and this show is sponsored by Farm to Fork. If you're a fan of premium, locally farmed meats delivered straight to your door, I've got some exciting news. Farm to Fork makes it easy to get high-quality steaks, air-chilled chicken, wild-caught seafood, and more, all with no antibiotics, hormones, or GMOs. Plus, everything comes flash frozen and individually packaged for your convenience. Farm to Fork's meats are top-notch. I've had some amazing steaks that were tender, juicy, and perfectly cooked. Their chicken is air chilled, so it's fresher and more flavorful than what you get in the store. And the wild caught seafood is a game changer. Fresh, clean, and full of flavor. Honestly, this has been life changing for me, especially someone who's trying to eat better and get more protein in my life. Farm to Fork really does have, and the seafood for me is really the big difference. It's so, so, so good. It's so fresh. And Farm to Fork is delivering all across Ontario and Western Quebec. And the best part, delivery is free with a minimum order of $199. You don't even have to leave the house to get this kind of quality. I've got a special code just for you. Use LOCKEDON40 to get $40 off your first order at Farm to Fork. Visit farmtoforkdelivery.ca to start stocking up on the best meats around. Again, that's LOCKEDON40 for $40 off your first order, and I'm going to spell that for you. Farm, F-A-R-M, to the number 2, Fork, F-O-R-K, delivery.ca. Farm to Fork, delicious, locally farmed meats delivered straight to your door.
All right, home stretch, Laura. Then the week is over. We've made it through another week. You've made it through another week, listener. Thank you for sticking with us this week. As always, these weeks are challenging without Canadiens hockey, but we found a way. We will always find a way for this show. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Laura, for bringing yourself to the show every day. I really appreciate it. All right, next question. Matt Crawford asks, "What do you think was with the Logan Mailloux call up? Seemed an odd time to trot him out, given they were kind of must-win games, and Struble wasn't playing poorly. Then he played almost 17 minutes on Saturday before sitting out Sunday. Was he being showcased? If not, who? If so, who was that audition for?" I think we floated this earlier this week. This idea that there was something weird about that Logan Mailloux call up.
We
Yeah,
definitely did. We talked about it, and Ian's theory is that it was for LA. He was being showcased to LA. I think personally, maybe they didn't like Jaden Struble's game all that much. There were a couple of boneheaded mistakes he made, but I'm guessing the initially when they called him up, it was to have bodies, right? Caden Gooley being absent and Logan Mailloux being available and the next name on the list. I think it was that actual playing of him, I think, had to do with Jaden Struble's game more than anything else.
I think that the Canadiens have had a hard time scoring leading into the break, and Mailloux, while his defensive play is, erratic and difficult to predict, although I thought he was quite nice defensively towards the end of that stretch of him in the lineup. What he brings is offense, and the Canadiens needed it. They needed offense from him, and he delivered. He was able to, I forget what game it was. He was able to score at some point over that stretch. He played pretty decent. Like I get it, but it was just sort of weird how he was brought into the lineup when the games that he played, the games that he sat, like it just didn't something be there. I'm not sure what. I don't want to say like they're showcasing him for a trade. Definitely but like something was weird. And I think it's something to monitor heading into March 7th, because who knows? Ken Hughes might try to swing for the fences here. He might need to move a prospect of Logan Mailloux's quality to make the move that he wants to make.
Right. We do have a late breaking question. I know we're going to get into a really fun one shortly. And this is kind of related to the Noah Dobson question. John C. asks, do we push the eject button on Patrik Laine, or is this season a wash for him? My answer to that is it's too soon. We can't make
Yeah.
decisions on Patrik Laine right now.
Yeah, look, if we were so willing to let this season effectively be a wash for Kirby Dach, I think we have to do the same for Patrik Laine. I just think it's what's fair. It's what's fair to him. He's coming. The fact that he's playing at all this season after the injury that he suffered in the preseason, we know we're not getting top quality Patrik Laine. He's going to need a summer to rehab it some more, and then we'll find out more next year. I don't think hitting the eject button on him at this point makes a ton of sense. Unless again, like we talked about earlier, unless there's a guy like Noah Dobson coming back, then
exactly.
I'm wearing a Patrik Laine jersey right now. I will pack Patty's bags. Like that is that's a move the Canadiens would need to make. All right. Luke Bellencourt asks, how should teams use their retention spots? Is it better to make a bad contract tolerable or a good contract great? For example, is saving 50% on Dvorak versus saving 50% on Matheson. What's your sort of thought there? Do you want to make do you want to put a lipstick on a pig and take 50% off like Dvorak's contract and be like, look, now he's only $2 million, or Matheson, who's a really good player on an already pretty decent contract, and then cut that in half, and now you've duplicated his value essentially.
I think that's really interesting because so far what we generally see it being used is to make a terrible contract palatable, right? But that would be really I honestly, again, why are we trying to trade Mike Matheson? We almost went a week without talking about Mike Matheson.
Yeah.
Almost. I think that's really intriguing because it depends on the return. Because I do think that if there is someone out there that is really worth swinging for the fences, this could be one of the ways that you swing. But I wouldn't do it just to get rid of a guy, right? Like, you want to make a good contract great. That means you're expecting greatness in return. I'm not saying only Mike Matheson. I'm saying he's part of a package. And you make it look like a steal for the other team, but what you're really getting is a building block for your future that is truly going to be part of this core and is truly going to be part of the success of this team. Yeah, it's got to you have to use it sparingly. I think you really have to. It's for when you are making a big splash.
Yeah, it's either you're making a big splash, but I think on top of that, you only have 3 of them. I think if you're going to use them, you need to eat the most money you possibly can, because if you're using a full retention spot and you're shaving $500,000 off a contract, that's not worth it, right? You're using the spot inefficiently.
Exactly.
Whereas instead you can use it to eat up $3-4 million on a big contract. That means a little bit more. So that's sort of my thoughts there. Again, this is a great reminder. The Canadiens only have one of these heading into the trade deadline. The other 2 are taken up by Jake Allen and still somehow Jeff Petrie. That seems like ancient history. All right. 2 more questions to wrap us up here. Danny Joe 22 asks, do you feel like we are flogging Hudson too hard? Now we don't need to win every game. Why not reduce his minutes or rotate him on power play 1 to give the guy a break? I could see the point when the mix was a reality. Are they playing Hudson too much?
Here's the thing. You're going to have to strap him to the bench to keep him from going out there for that long. He loves playing hockey. He loves playing a lot of minutes. And he's basically needed in all situations right now.
Yeah.
And the thing is, yes, it's true that the Canadiens don't need to win and they don't need to be in the mix, but they do have to make progress. At one point, you are going to have to play these young guys, even if it's not really going to result in immediate payoff. Because the long-term benefit of having, and again, they do kind of play him too much a little bit because they don't really have that many alternatives. But he's fine, right? He got a little tired and now he's got a 2-week break. He's really gonna want to play more. He's the kind of person, he's building up his own instincts, right? And for somebody whose play relies so much on having better instincts than every other person on the ice in that given moment, I think he's just kind of building, he's adding more to his code, his coding.
Yeah. I was gonna say he's like a learning computer, and every time he's out on the ice, he's adding more information that's only going to help him later on. I think that, look, the kid's 20. I think he'll be okay. I don't think we're looking at Lane Hutson at the end of the game going, boy, he looks tired. I don't think that's a reality. So I think it's
he
good to
makes
get this
some
data from
mistakes.
him.
Yeah, and I
Sure,
think
they all,
he makes some
yeah,
mistakes.
like every
Um,
20-year-old on the ice or off the ice does.
Yeah. And maybe we were more forgiving of his mistakes earlier and now we're seeing them more because
Sure.
in the beginning we were so dazzled by how good he was. But I don't think he's been markedly worse for playing that much. I think he had a couple like I literally could count on one hand the bad games that he's had in the like, I think 56 that he's played, 57 that he's played, or 58. I can't remember the number, but yeah.
Yeah. All right. Last question. We have to hustle through this one. In honor of today being Valentine's Day, Emma Lily 23 on Blue Sky asks,
Mhm.
what Valentine's present would you give to each player?
Oh, honestly, Nick Suzuki. I don't know. I don't know where I would start with Nick Suzuki, but probably a new cat. Multiple cats. He's definitely a cat bro. Cold coffee, lots of candy. That's what he lives
Yeah.
on. Yuri Slavkovsky. Maybe like a little like a book on how to grow up to be an adult. Just like snacks for snacks.
Naturally.
Maybe a brain for Brendan Gallagher.
It's turned
Who
into
else
the
is
Wizard
there?
of Oz.
Yeah. Like a nice little goodbye gift for Christian Dvorak, by way of a hint. For
Yeah, you get
Armia,
him a
I get a
plane
big
ticket.
ticket. For
Enjoy
Armia, I get
Detroit.
Well, if Detroit's interested, please call. A picture of Jake Evans for Yoel Armia and a picture of Yoel Armia for Jake Evans.
Laura. No, I'd forgotten. I had forgotten, Laura.
I
Oh,
know. I know we're gonna get some sad comments about
yeah.
this. I think and you know what? For David Savard, I would find some sort of cool like ninja kitchen thing or like something kitchen related that's like cool because he's gonna like make a lot of like he's gonna get a lot of use out of it.
Yeah. The only thing I can think of is getting those little like sugar chalk hearts and just giving Cole Caulfield gets like a pound of those because they're just pure sugar. And I feel like that's what he would really want.
I think so.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. That's going to do it for us on today's episode of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day and for subscribing wherever you get your podcasts. For your second listen, head over to Locked On Fantasy Hockey and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steel and Flip. Subscribe to Locked On Fantasy Hockey wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us anywhere that social media is distributed as Locked On Canadiens. We are also lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com for the email for mailbags in the future. You can send them in at all times. We're always collecting them, but towards the end of each week is really when we want to start collecting those. So keep sending them in. You can find me on Blue Sky at Maybe It's Ian. You can find Laura at The Active Stick. Thanks so much for tuning in and enjoy Canada-US on Saturday night. Hockey Night Canada, Montreal, Canada-US. Very exciting. See you guys on Monday.